Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Last Friday of July. Unbelievable how it flies by. Hi, Robin. Good to
Good
see you.
morning. Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Miss Maya.
Hello, Graham. Rebecca.
Good morning.
Hello, John.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, folks.
What's happening here? I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you. Whenever you are lonely or walking in the dark, I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being.
Welcome, people. Returning visitors, good to see you again. New folks, welcome to the community.
I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you whenever you are lonely or walking in the dark. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being.
In a minute or so, folks, give a chance for a few more to join us. We'll enjoy the music.
I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you whenever you are lonely or walking in the dark. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being. The astonishing light of your being. The astonishing light of your
All right. Welcome, folks. We still have a few more people jumping in, but why don't we go ahead and get started? So it's again, good to see folks who we've seen before and the new faces as well. It's a happy last day of the month of July, wherever you may be zooming in from. I'm in Northern Ohio, so it's a beautiful summer day here. So it's as people join in through Zoom. We're grateful to have Charles Holmes with us today. We're going to do introductions here in a little bit as we go forward. My partner Maya and we are glad you are all here. So the first piece that we always do, the storyteller picks a song to bring us in with. So Charles, a little bit about that song and why you chose it today.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm joining you from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation, which is now known as North Vancouver. And that song, curious how many of you know of Barbara McAfee. If you don't, look her up. That song, I just love it. And perhaps, Jeff, as part of the exploration, I can share more about my experience having Barbara join me in gatherings with organizations and bringing music as a core part of what we do. So I got a little choked up listening to that because I just adore Barbara. She's become such a dear friend and has transformed the way that I work with groups, reminding me that one of the most powerful ways to touch our hearts is through music.
Yeah,
and we tend to forget that.
We do, absolutely. music and other arts that we do not bring into our day-to-day lives. At least I don't enough as it works forward. So thanks for sharing that, Charles. And definitely as we move into the story, if there's elements you want to share, details about how she and the music has impacted your work, would be wonderful. So as we get going, if it's your first time here, you'll know we'll be doing a few small breakouts, just to kind of connect. Connection before content is a premise that I learned from Peter Block, and others maybe have learned from Peter or other people. We want to make sure we honor that, not just because it's a way to do it, because I really feel it's a way to move into some space together. So in a minute here or so, Maya will put us into random breakout groups. When you get into your breakout groups, as a reminder, no advice. Listen to see the world through the eyes of your partners, and just share based on the couple questions that we will show for you as we move forward. So we'll go ahead with the two questions. The first one is why did you choose to be here today? And the corollary to that is, what did you have to give up to be here today? So as you have a conversation in your groups, why did you choose to be here? And what are some things you might have had to give up? So Maya, what is it, 10 minutes for this? We will move forward with Maya. Okay. She's getting the breakout rooms rolling. Good to see everybody. Hello, Peter. Joey.
Correct.
Beautiful. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Always great to see the smiling faces coming out of the breakout rooms. So let's take a few minutes and feel free to just open your mic or speak up. And the question is, what struck you about that conversation you just had?
I think for me, being in a room of people who are all focused on this. I attend a fair amount of Zooms. I teach through Zoom. And the world is full of people multitasking and doing 8 things while they're on the call, or they don't turn on their video at all. And it's refreshing to be in a space with people who want to be here, are focused on being here, and are curious about what they're going to walk away with.
Beautiful.
I was struck by how shiny the people were in my group in terms of they shone with love and light. Even Tessé, who had her camera off, her voice shone with that. And it's just nice to be around people who want to magnify that in others.
It was a word spoken. It was, I thought just now, light, and I wrote down lightness about our group. There was some kind of a levity about the whole thing, being back in the room together, even though we've not met each other before.
Yeah, I think what struck me is that it is about community. The people who come here, people who care about community, actually care, and that is refreshing.
I was a little bit late joining the overall session and my group, but I immediately felt welcomed and supported and connected. And I think we were just starting to discover, various connections that we had in such a short time. That was kind of really energizing to me.
I was struck by just the support, and again, as Graham said, the care that that all the people in my group shared, and resources and perspective, and I just appreciate the support. And again, echoing that excitement of everybody coming together, focused and excited about this topic. I often kind of talk into the wind about community or bringing groups together, and it's nice to have it when it land with people, and there's just an instant they get it and they're excited about it, and that then excites me more.
For me, it was the task of 2 questions. We were able to get through it in a couple of minutes, and then we had a whole bunch of free time that we were able to explore where we were. And in the process of answering the 2 questions, also we connected a lot in terms of physically where we were. For example, Beth and I, we were like a mile apart or something like that. And Elizabeth and I, we had visited in the same state. So it was fantastic to connect that way beyond just the task as well as the relationship.
You know, Jenny, you said most of us feel like we're talking to the wind. I had the image that we're talking with the wind when we're together here. Image.
Beautiful. It's a lot of words popping for me: light, curious, connection, energy, wind. Just a lot of breadth and depth as we just had a couple minutes. And thanks, Manny, for saying that. Yeah, with the questions that are kind of an excuse to get you started. It's just you guys, the group goes where it needs to go as you connect, which is the reason that we do that before we move into content. So thank you all as you had a chance to meet some new folks that are no longer strangers, we hope. So with that, Maya, you want to introduce Charles to the group?
Sure thing. Well, today we are joined by Charles Holmes, a dear friend of mine. Charles is if you read his bio online, he says he's a social alchemist, and I chuckled when I read that because he totally is. There's something really special when you're in a room with Charles. I've been in quite a few, lucky enough to be in virtual and in person, and there's a magic that happens. So that social alchemy would be probably the best way I could describe him. Master facilitator. He's works with a lot of movements and organizations around the world to bring people together to co-create solutions and identify the gifts that they bring in order to kind of create the common good all around, whether it's through environment or food systems or how we are together. So it's a pleasure to have you, Charles, here today. Thank you for saying yes. I'm going to pin Charles to the screen, and Jeff and myself too. I do apologize for my voice. It's not the prettiest today, but that's okay. Welcome, Charles. And the first question we have for you is, why did you choose to be on this journey?
The journey of, the journey of this gathering, or the journey of the broader work I do in the world. And I'm going to choose the first one first. And also share a little bit of a story as relates to what I'm about to do. I think one of the first gatherings during COVID that I attended on Zoom was with a dear friend named Bob's last name's escaping me at the moment, an organization called New Stories. And we had a group about this size on this number of people on the call, and I found myself drifting and into that kind of multitasking. So I decided I'd start writing, and a practice that has evolved for me is writing spoken word poetry based on what I hear. So I want to share what emerged from your What Struck You. The gift of presence and curiosity together, magnifying each other's brightness, discovering lightness, discovering care and support, welcomed and connected, together generating energy, excited, energized by the power of each other's presence. Questions guide us into deeper exploration, and together we talk with the wind. So Maya, how far back do you want me to go with why this journey?
As far back as you'd like. Can be from birth.
So I'm a cultural anthropologist by education. When I graduated in 1987, you can do the math, I'm 60. I found myself leaving the university going, what am I going to do with this incredibly interesting but seemingly useless degree? And I was traveling to visit some relatives, and I was in the airport, and on the newsstand, I caught my eye Business Week magazine. I'd never studied anything about business. I really didn't have much interest in business. I was more interested in, studying ethnic cultures and learning about why people in different parts of the world do things the way they do. But Business Week magazine, the cover title was Anthropologists Study the Shop Floor. And I thought, wow, I better check this out. And the whole article was all about bringing anthropology and the study of culture into organizations. And at that point, I thought, wow, here's an application for this really interesting degree. And that was the beginning of my journey into working in organizations. But even prior to that, I grew up on a farm in a little place called Prince Edward Island, eastern coast of Canada. And my mother was very involved in the Women's Institute and in creating community gatherings. They bought a farm that had a little one-room schoolhouse on it. And when they consolidated the school system, these schoolhouses were sold for $1. And my parents bought it and turned it into a community gathering center. And we would have local kids from around the neighborhood. It's a very rural location coming to do art, to connect with each other. And I'd have to say, those experiences of the combination of working hard on a farm, but then convening, we never called it that, but gathering in the old schoolhouse to connect with each other were incredibly formative for me in the work that I've been doing over the years. Oh, what just happened, Maya? All I see is myself and you now. And Jeff, that was a little scary. I felt like I was in community, and now it's like I'm on a stage.
Okay, we can go back if you'd like.
So that was some of the formative work. I won't go through the path of many different my work pathway is, I think of it as a sailboat. It's always tracked in the direction of supporting people and having deep connection and meaningful conversation, but it's never been a straight line. I worked in a faculty of business for many years, designed customized MBAs and different programs. And I'm going to jump ahead to 2005. I was asked by a friend of mine if I would help a friend of his who is dear friends with the Dalai Lama to help in the creation of a center for peace and education. He said, you know lots of people, you connect people, which, by the way, is my DNA. And thanks, Maya, for your kind introduction around social alchemy. I do think that connecting people and bringing people together and discovering the alchemy of what's possible is a big piece of what I do. So I helped, his name is Victor Chan. I helped Victor put together a board of directors for what then has become the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. But about a week later, I approached Victor and I said, when the Dalai Lama comes to town next, why don't we do a fundraiser and invite a whole bunch of CEOs to pay $20,000 each and raise money? And what do you think? He didn't say anything. And 2 weeks later, he came back and he said, His Holiness is open to the idea. Would you like to organize it? And I didn't miss a beat. I just thought, yeah, why not? And little did I know that saying yes to that question would change the trajectory of my life in I would say, pretty profound and fundamental ways, which led to my connection with Peter. All kinds of things ensued. But let me just share two other quick pieces about that story. One of the first people I called was another Peter Senge at MIT, to say, would you be willing to co-facilitate this with me? And Peter's response was, I would give my left baby finger to be in the presence of the Dalai Lama, but not with a group of only CEOs. You need to rethink what the approach would be. And he said, you should probably talk to a few people. And one of the people I spoke to, and keep in mind, this is in 2005, was Barbara Stocking, who was then the CEO of Oxfam in the UK. And I'll never forget, I'm sure you've all had these experiences where you remember certain conversations, where you were in that very moment, what the weather was like. I was on my cell phone. I was pulled over in Gastown, Vancouver. It was pouring rain. And I remember Barbara's words so clearly. She said, what we need in the world now more than ever is to connect for change. We need to bring people together across the divides, especially of the corporate and the NGO worlds. And it was like a penny just fell. And that was the genesis of a dialogue called Connecting for Change, in which we brought roughly 60 Fortune 200, mostly CEOs, and 60 NGO leaders, and we brought them together. One of the interesting pieces about the convening was that in order to accept the invitation to join the 3-day gathering with His Holiness, each of the pairs needed to connect with each other and have a phone conversation around one question. And the question that we posed to them was, what is the help you most need to advance the work that you are most passionate about? And I'll never forget one of the CEOs of a big oil and gas company. We paired him with the daughter of David Suzuki, a very famous environmentalist here in Canada. And I'll never forget the CEO of this oil and gas company saying, you've got to be beep kidding me. You want me to talk to Severin Suzuki? And I said, yes. Long story short, the two of them had the conversation on the phone. They hugged when they arrived here in Vancouver for the gathering. And the friendship and the learnings that evolved and emerged between those two over the years is just astounding. Another CEO came into the room. He was paired with the leader of an organization called United We Can, which is based in the Vancouver downtown east side, which is one of the highest drug addicted populations, I think, in North America. Ken Liotte ran this organization, providing both shelter and work and opportunities for people in the downtown east side. This CEO asked, where's my partner? And Ken was just walking in at the time. Ken looked around. I walked over to him to introduce him to the CEO, and Ken said, these are not my people. I have to go back to my community. I said, wait a second. I went over to the CEO and I said, Ken isn't comfortable here. Would you be comfortable going to visit his community? This man's name was Jim. Jim left with Ken, and we didn't see him again. He spent 3 days with Ken learning about the work that Ken was doing in the community. It was far more important to him than spending 3 days with the Dalai Lama. So multiple examples of that emerged through that conversation. And I realized at that time, and with just huge impact from my initial conversations with this Peter Block, who's with us here, about the power of bringing people together, breaking them into small groups, asking seemingly simple yet profound and increasingly powerful questions that we can change the world. And yeah, there are many other stories I could share, but I'm going to just pause there.
Thank you, Charles. Well, very intriguing. I think you already kind of hit some of these, but maybe as you kind of reflect on this journey, Charles, as you kind of go back, any additional milestones or things that kind of maybe cause you to pause in your journey, reflecting? Now you've shared quite a few already, but anything in these milestone things, people, events, circumstances that have caused you to pause in your journey?
There's one that jumps to mind, and it has to do with a dialogue. I can't remember the all of the details or the specifics, but it was a dialogue that began around the power of intention, personal intention and collective intention. And I brought the question about the power of intention to a group I was working with in the the Chiricahua Mountains, and we were doing some solo retreats, and this huge fire, forest fire, largest forest fire in the region came through, and John Milton, who was one of our teachers on this journey, his cabin was in the path of the fire, and he asked us if we do a collective intention setting exercise that his cabin would be saved. And so we stood in circle and set the intention. And months later, I was in another gathering. John was there. He told the story about the fire coming through, but his cabin had a ring of green grass around it and had not burnt. And so we continued, and a few other extraordinary examples of the power of intention ensued. I left that gathering, and the next day was facilitating a meeting with a group of 24 doctors. Actually, it was a workshop on leadership and the power of community that I was teaching. And I started telling this story about the power of intention. And I'm looking at this group of 24 doctors, and I'm sensing they've got this kind of lizard look on their eye where it's like, oh, this is like too much. And so I thought, oh boy, this isn't going over very well. And you know, as I often do as a convener facilitator, when I think things aren't going well, I always default to, let's take a break. And so I said, okay, let's take a break. And before I was just getting break out of my mouth. As I was saying it, this one woman stood up and she said, stop. Before we take a break, I want to ask the rest of you here in this room, if you have never had the experience of what Charles is talking about. And she said, and the word that I use for that experience is magic. The magic of and power of an intention. And she said, has anyone here not experienced magic? None of them raised their hands. And she looked at me and she said, so keep talking about the power of intention, personal and collective. And that's something that has worked me a lot. And, you know, the curiosity I hold is, you know, what is my intention? And it's one of the things I love about Peter's question. And, you know, that I learned from Peter, and that Maya, you offered to us. Essentially, why did you say yes to being here? Or why was it important for you to be here? Or what was your intention in coming here today? So that, you know, when I get calls about projects, I'm in this, I think, incredibly privileged place right now to be able to, I'm learning, I'm not there yet, but learning to say no. Part of that learning to say no is, what's my intention if I say yes to this? So that would be one, Jeff, that quickly comes to mind.
Beautiful. Absolutely, power of intention. And maybe related that a little bit, Charles, is you know, what has surprised or is surprising to you currently as you continue to convene with others in community? What surprises have you seen or are you currently seeing?
I'm going to relate it to the conversation we had in our small group and Greg's example, because it just and it was built on in conversation with John and Peter. Greg shared an example of many years ago, a situation where there was a divisiveness between union and management, and the strength of the story that existed about whose fault it was. And Greg, I should really, I'd like to ask, actually, I'd like to ask you, because I think this piece around the power of story, you know, and I asked you the question, what shifted, and you commented in our small group, and I'll bring your voice in here, your words about the nature of the story that changed it all.
Yeah, this is many years ago, and unions and leadership in companies tended not to engage each other except in negotiations, and we had a big productivity problem. And the story that existed in the company, and it had probably been around in this particular business for 20 plus years, and was in the aircraft engine business, and they're a government contractor. That's their roots. And so productivity was never a measure in the contract. Well, then the business became commercial, and of course that all changed. So we engaged a group of actually 40 people and took them off site and got them to identify the most powerful norms in the organization that caused problems. And then we presented that to the senior leadership of the business. And it wasn't Neil Clapp and Greg presenting it. It was the people telling their story powerfully and emotionally to the leaders of the company, and actually asking them, will you help us change these norms by taking these actions? And it's like they could have said no, they didn't, and you could see the leaders became committed. They got an intention out of the conversation that this can change and I can change it. And they did. And there was great progress, and negotiations changed, grievances went down. I mean, it's a whole great outcome that I won't bore you with. But it was started with 40 people in a diagonal slice, top of the organization to the bottom, working together and talking to each other about what the problems are and what we need to do.
Awesome.
And they still, I went back a couple times to visit people, and people say, "Oh, you were part of the French Lick 40," and it became the breakthrough became a story that empowered the organization for more breakthroughs. Gives me shivers.
Greg, I love it, and the conversation we had in our small group was around how stories can keep us stuck or set us free. And I think back to your question, Jeff, the story of the current state of the world, the state of climate, politics, whatever story we shape our lives through our stories. And I'm just so encouraged these days. I mean, one of the place I met Maya was with an organization that was bringing people together who are using food as a tool for social change, and the stories that we heard and that Maya then amplified through her beautiful way of writing and communicating and conveying. It's changing the stories, and we change the stories through these kinds of conversations. I mean, it's the power of the small group. We hear each other's stories. In organizations like the one that Greg described, it transforms people's lives. So I think that's something that's really present for me right now, because I'm working on a project with the UN around the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals right now, and lots of people will say we're not going to make it. We won't achieve those goals by 2030, and there's probably some truth to that. And yet, when you start to amplify the examples of people who are working on many of those goals, either directly or indirectly, it is so encouraging. I mean, there is so much good happening in the world.
Yeah, beautiful, Charles. And kind of in that same line, as you continue this journey of bringing people together, connecting and working kind of on shifting that story from one of problems into possibility, and working with people who say, no way, we'll achieve these by 2030. Say, well, that's not going to get us anywhere. What's your hope for the future?
Well, I guess there are a number of them. And Maya, I appreciate you naming the distinction around the shift from problem to possibility. So one of my hopes for the future is that we will engage in more conversations about possibility versus problem. Problem gets us fixated, in my experience, in fixing, getting rid of, making things go away, which I'm tired of. I mean, it's energy sapping, in many cases, soul sucking. A hope that we more broadly recognize the power of focusing on possibility is absolutely one of my hopes for the future. I think another hope is that we remember some of the things that I think we have forgotten about how to come together. And it's one thing I love about Peter's work. It's none of it feels foreign. It's something that I'll speak for myself. Anytime I'm invited into well, again, speak for myself, into some of these conversations and these questions, it's like, wow, I remember the importance of the quality of that question. I'm not sure where from, but it's there. And I guess another, and I'll offer this as the last one. I forget who said it at the beginning. I think it was Rebecca. My hope is that people will increasingly recognize the gift of presence and being present with intention. Because I think, Rebecca, as you said it in your share from the breakout group, all too often people come together multitasking with so many other things happening. And so slowing down to be present and curious with each other is something I strive to create more of, and I hope there is more of in the world.
A lot of things going on for me, Charles, as you share your journey and being present for sure. So as you kind of maybe as you look forward into what you're currently working on and what you want to work on, what does success look like for you and for maybe the people you work with?
Can I answer that by reading a passage from one of my favorite books? So some of you have heard me share this before, but this is a book by an Ojibwe elder. He has since passed away. His name's Richard Wagamase, and the book is Embers. And Jeff, for me, I'm going to answer your question with this reading and one other example. Success looks like people getting what I'm about to read in deeply experiential and practical ways. From our very first breath, we are in relationship. With that indrawn draft of air, we become joined to everything that ever was, is, and ever will be. When we exhale, we forge that relationship by virtue of the act of living. Our breath commingles with all breath, and we are a part of everything. That's the simple fact of things. We are born into a state of relationship, and our ceremonies, our rituals, and even our meetings are guides to lead us deeper into that relationship with all things. Big lesson? Relationships never end, they just change. In believing that lies the freedom to carry compassion, empathy, love, kindness, and respect into and through whatever changes. We are made more by that practice. And for me, the practice is that, the connection, recognizing the connection to everything that ever was, ever is, and ever will be. And about 3 months ago, Jeff, I was hosting a 2-day strategic planning session for a very large credit union here in Canada. And I invited an local Indigenous elder to welcome us And I didn't give her much guidance other than to welcome us to the land. And she gave a beautiful land acknowledgement and welcome. And then she asked everybody to stand up in a circle. And she said, I'd like to launch your 2 days with a prayer. And I'm looking around this circle at these predominantly male still senior executives. Heads bowed, eyes softened while she said a prayer. And in that moment, I just kind of pinched myself and I thought, if this is the last thing I ever do, that's it. And the interesting thing was the chair of the board and many on the board over the course of it was actually 3 days, came up and just to say thank you for that prayer and that opening. And so success to me looks like more of that.
Beautiful.
More of that and more of this.
Thanks for sharing that, Charles. And maybe in the chat we can add that book and author as well, if we can.
Yeah.
If people want to learn that. So hey, you mentioned right before we brought everybody in, Charles, you may want to talk about music and how that has inspired and been with you as you convene. So I want to give you a chance to riff on that for a piece if you'd like, as we begin to wrap up the storytelling portion.
Sure. One of the things I find really fascinating is thinking about the various people who have introduced you to people, who may have introduced you to other people and to other people who have changed your life. You know, you kind of track them back. It's like, how did that happen? How did I meet that person? I don't know how I met Michael Jones. And I'd like to acknowledge Michael and his music. He's he passed away from Parkinson's 2 years ago, an extraordinary pianist who, when he heard about this Connecting for Change work I was doing, called me kind of out of the blue, and somebody had connected him to me and blah, 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 and offered to come and play music at one of these dialogues. Peter introduced me to Barbara McAfee. Barbara and Michael changed my life. The depth to which their music touched me personally and enabled me to show up in more whole, full, and complete ways when working with groups, I can't explain it. Both of them, one of the interesting outcomes of the gathering that we facilitated with the Dalai Lama was a request from multiple organizations to replicate that kind of experience inside organizations like Quaker Foods, Pepsi, and others. And we did. And I'll never forget, in the Harold Washington Library, top floor of the Harold Washington Library in Chicago, beautiful domed space with big olive trees. We set a grand piano in the middle of this area, and we had about 60 chairs, small tables, groups of 4. People walked in and they looked like, are we in the right place? Is this the senior executive gathering for Quaker Foods? Like, yeah. You want us to sit at like these little tiny cocktail tables? Like what? And we had greenery and other things. We brought nature into the room. As people sat, Michael started to play, and it changed everything. I mean, you could just feel people sink into the place. And Barbara, I was looking earlier for the song that Barbara wrote around that particular event. She wrote a song about the invisible people who support us and make it possible for us to do our work. She wrote it. The song was about the janitor in the bathroom of the airport. It was about the saxophone player that we met on the street. It was about the security guard. And I wish I could find that song. I may, when we go into the next small group, see if I can find it. But she then sang that song at another gathering and told the story about it. So I have so many stories I could share about music and the power of music and art. And I'm sure many are familiar with graphic facilitation and having great artists capturing what emerges from a group. I've had the privilege of working with probably a dozen amazing graphic facilitators over the years. But Michael and Barbara in particular, I want to just sing their praises for also their praises for their courage. And Jeff, if I could, I want to tell one very quick Michael Jones story. Michael Jones used to work with, I believe it was, might have been ILA, International Leadership Association. No, it wasn't ILA. Anyway, it was a group out of Chicago, Peter Senge and Bill Isaacs and many others. And Michael was a leadership consultant. And they were at a hotel. And Michael took a break and went down the hall at the end of the day to a piano, and he just sat and was playing music. And as he was playing, he noticed out of the corner of his eye one of the participants from the workshop, with a glass of wine in his hand, sort of staggering down the hallway, coming closer and closer to the piano. And Michael started playing something different. And the guy came up and put his glass on the piano, and he said, "What's that you're playing?" And Michael said, "Moon River." And the guy said, no. Before that, what were you playing? And Michael said, "No, some of my own music." And the gentleman said, "Could you play more of it?" And he grabbed his glass and he sat down in a chair and listened while Michael played his own music. And after 5 or 10 minutes, gentleman gets up, comes over, sets his empty wine glass on the piano and says to Michael, "What do you do?" And Michael said, "I'm a leadership development consultant." And the gentleman said, "Are there many of those in the world?" And Michael said, "Yeah, I think there are lots." And as he was starting to turn away, this gentleman looked at Michael and he said, "You know, you really should rethink what you do, because if you don't play your music, nobody else will." Michael stopped being a leadership development consultant and has, over the course of his life, 11 CDs, a number of Juno award-winning CDs. And I had the privilege of sitting in many rooms with Michael while he played the piano and brought us into a completely different place. And I bless his soul.
Beautiful story, Charles. Links into being present, getting your voice in the room, whatever that might look like, singing. Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to go into a short breakout just to kind of, with such a large group, just to kind of think about what we've heard. The question, what struck you about what Charles said? And then we'll come back and we'll just have a chance to share comments, questions as we kind of begin to wrap things up. So thank you for giving us such a plethora of things, at least in my mind, to go to, Charles. So we'll be in a breakout room for a short time. What struck you about what Charles said? And we'll come back and have a chance folks can share comments and questions.
All right, opening up now.
As you're present now, what's showing up for you, if you want to specifically share something with Charles or a question with Charles, but as we all are here in this community, what's showing up for folks?
I'll second Jeff's comment on timing being off. Peter was sharing something very personal, so we got yanked back into the main room. But there is so beautiful in terms of shivers from the stories that we are sharing with each other. So powerful. Thank you.
Just a complete sense of joy this morning, of having entered this community and had a sense of certainly clear connection with people and hearing the stories and seeing the faces and the light, and just joy to have to be here. So thank you. Thank you for convening this.
I just want to say, Charles, that you are magic. And you have an intuitive way of being with us. I was saying the fact you invited Greg to tell the story. You began by telling it, and then it dawned on you from somewhere. Let him tell it. And you with the Dalai Lama, I was saying in my group, I think that's the session I was at, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my one intervention was to say out loud in the presence of the Dalai Lama, we go to lunch in 15 minutes. That was a high point of my career. Anyway, Charles, just your tone and your rhythm and the questions and the way of being wherever you are, it is pure magic. I'm so happy to feel it again this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And you may not have said very much in those 3 days, but similarly, your presence and in the small groups impact was significant. And you forever are a reminder to me to flip the switch from being the sage on the stage to being hopefully I don't know what the word is, provocateur, to turn it over to others.
Exactly. Fool is another technical term for
that. Well, we are close to the time we had. And as we started, Charles did want, if anything you want to kind of say, Charles, but also you want us to kind of close out with another song. So Maya does have that song ready, but anything about the next song we're going to hear, or anything you'd like to say as we temporarily close down this community until we get to meet again?
So 2 things. Those of you familiar with Peter's work will know of one of the powerful conversations, and that is the gifts. And Peter, there's a group that I've been meeting with for 16 years. It's 20 of us who have worked in the sustainability convening space. We meet 3 times a year to share what's happening for us personally, professionally, and politically. And we've had deaths, we've had births, we've had marriages, we've had separations. It's an extraordinary group. And last week, we did the gifts conversation. And to sit with a group of people you've known for 16 years and have 10 other people write on a card, the gift I see in you is, and we did that for each person. There were 12 of us there. It took us 4 hours to do it. And I have my little stack of cards that I received, and it is such a gift. And everyone else was just so deeply and profoundly grateful. And many of them are taking that and reusing it and doing it with other groups. So the gift of the gifts conversation is just so powerful. Yeah, huge. And I think the song is Yes. And it's Barbara McAfee, The Power of Saying Yes. And it so connects with the small group conversation we just had about courage. And Greg also evoked Bruce Springsteen in our group conversation, and his comment was the line of the song was, everyone has a hungry heart. We do, and we have to have the courage to say yes, yes, yes to showing up. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for choosing to say yes to showing up today. And Peter, special thanks to you for your life's work, and Jeff and Maya for continuing to amplify through these conversations. Miss you guys, and it's just really great seeing you. So thank you
so much, Charles. We'll play the music. If you can stay for a bit to listen, wonderful. Hope to see you again build these communities between our sessions. Build your own communities, folks. If nothing else, as Charles says, having gifts conversations can be very powerful. A little louder, maybe, Maya.
May you breathe easy. May your heart be light. May you open your life to each joy, each delight. May you walk with assurance that your way is blessed. May you dwell in the spirit of yes. Yes, 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 yes. May you know your beauty through your loved one's eyes. May you face every change with a taste for surprise. May you welcome each stranger as a treasured guest. May you dwell in the spirit of yes. Yes, 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 yes. May we hold all who suffer with loving care. May our being together ease the loads that we bear. May we take up the habit of happiness. May we dwell in the spirit of yes.
Thank you, Charles, for sharing that wonderful gift of Barbara's voice. At this
There are
point,
songs in the soil and the
Oops,
rivers
sorry.
and trees and the ears of your heart.
at this point, we'll just say so long until next time, folks, as we gather. Beautiful rest of your days.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
You. Take care.
Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Beautiful, Charles. Been too long since I've been in your presence, so thank you for your sharing.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Peter, for being here.
Really be special.
I'm
Really
grateful
special.
to be
So,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Bye, friends.
And I will say yes to any invitation any of the three of you make. Just putting that out there.
Beautiful. Back at you too, Charles. Thank you.
I invite you to have a wonderful 3 days this weekend.
It's going to be interesting. You will hear more about it. Perhaps
Good.
I'll give you a birthday call on Monday.
If there's an extra higher power, or who are these? What did you call them? Spirit.
Guiding spirits or ancestral
Yeah.
spirits.
Send them our way.
Incestuous, beautiful.
You do the hard work. Okay.
Great. All right, guys. Bye. Hope
Yes.
you feel better, Maya.
Thanks
Bye,
so much.
guys.